Hello, operators. Oriskany Jim here, welcoming you to another episode of the Sitrep podcast channel. So what we're going to be looking at today is the construction and painting of a Revell Snap-Tite A-10 Warthog ground attack aircraft of the U.S. Air Force. It's in 1:72 scale, which is approximately 20 millimeter. Most of my modern military collection is in 20 millimeter, so I figured why not? It's the logo of the Sitrep podcast channel. Let's go ahead and try to build this. Now, again, this is just a Snap-Tite model, the kind of model you buy for your kid if you're trying to get them in the hobby at a very young age. And yeah, we're going to see if we can make something viable out of this model kit. So here we are taking a look at the back of the box. Now, again, this is a Revell Snap-Tite kit. Nothing against Revell and nothing against Snap-Tites, but these are almost like toy kits rather than scale model kits that, again, you kind of, someone who's beginning in the hobby sort of starts off with. There's supposedly no glue and no paints required. Of course, we're going to use plenty of glue and paints. We're going to build this like an actual model kit. But here's the thing, when I bought this from the hobby store, this thing was a friggin' repack. Some poor 8-year-old kid had tried to put this together, made it about halfway, and then decided to put it back in the box, and his mom returned it to the store, and I bought it none the wiser. So again, this is a true model rescue episode. We're going to try and take a repack and build an actual tabletop miniature out of it. So the first thing I do is I get a blade, and I very carefully sort of slide it into the seams of where I'm assuming this poor young kid had tried to build this model himself before he either gave up or failed or his mom took it away from him. Basically, I re-disassemble the model back to its beginning state, and I try to go from there. So I'm starting with the wing. You'll notice I put no glue there on the very wingtips, on the very ends of the wings there. Because if you're familiar with the A-10 Warthog, you'll know that the wingtips on the aircraft have this very subtle sort of a downward turn right there on the wingtip. Like, oh, there you go. You can see right there in the center of frame. So what I'm working on here is to sort of glue this model together in a more permanent basis, doing the best I can with the manufacturer and with the gaps that I'm sure are going to appear. So yeah, we're going to do the best we can and see how it goes, moving forward. So the next step in this definite model rescue effort here is to fill in some of the gaps as best I can with some of the putty that I have on hand. I don't have the best putty, I'm afraid. I'm actually in my dad's workshop when I do this, so I only have wood putty. But I'm doing the best I can, and yep, here's the wing, all ready and assembled. So moving on to the fuselage, I'm beginning to realize just how much work I have cut out for me in saving and rescuing this model. I'm not sure who had this model before me, but whoever it was must have cut the pieces out of the sprue with a chainsaw. This thing is kind of a mess in a lot of places. We see here where one of the antenna underneath the nose of the fuselage on the ventral side, I think that's the IFF antenna, is about ready to fall off. So yeah, I've got some repair work to do, that's for sure. Alright, so here's the fuselage assembled and glued together. It wasn't quite as bad as I thought, especially on the dorsal side, which frankly is going to show more. So I'm actually pretty pleased about that. The ventral side does have a little bit of issue from where the previous owner hadn't really removed the parts from the sprue properly. You can see there's a little bit of damage. There's also some gaps. I might fill those in with some putty in order to finish up this piece. Okay, let's go ahead and build some engines to push this pig. What do you say? Alright, so here are the pieces that go into the engine assembly. Not really that many. This is the front of the engine assembly, that is the back of the engine assembly. And basically we have to put in the turbofans. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. Of course, turbofans go in the front. We sort of let that settle into its intended position there. Alright, let's go ahead and go with the other one. Alrighty, there we go. Good to go. Again, a Snap-Tite model, not really the highest end as far as skill level goes, or required skill level from the hobbyist, but we're truly trying to make the most of it here with what we were given. Now we're going to go ahead and put in the afterburning cones, I guess is the name for it. I'm not really an aviation expert, to be perfectly honest. These fit into these slight little grooves that we see there at the back of the engine cowlings. And now we're going to put in the ventral casings. There we go. Put a little bit of glue in the wells as well as the ridges where the pieces are supposed to rest. We're going to go ahead and put the ventral pieces of the cowlings into the engine assemblies. And then, oh man, that did not work at all. Oof. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of cleanup work there, folks. Sorry about that. But no worries. That's not... Come on, get in there, please! Okay, condolences. This part of the model doesn't really show when you put the whole thing together, so... sorry about that, folks, but we're going to go ahead and put the rest of this engine assembly together and then fix it to the aircraft, assuming we can get the damn thing together. Yeah, we're gonna have to fill that in with a little bit of putty there. There's definitely going to be some maintenance work on this engine assembly for sure. Alright, so here's the engine assembly all put together. You can see where I've got quite a bit of putty, a couple cubic yards of putty, trying to fill in some of these gaps. I know it doesn't look very pretty right now. I'm hoping that the paint is going to cover a lot of that as we move forward. Alright, the engine assembly is now in place. I tell you what, folks, this kit is really starting to test my patience and my skill as far as rescuing a model goes. But the engines are in place, and next we're moving on to the tail assembly, so let's hope we have some better luck there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and put the tail assembly together. So there are a few pieces here, the tail itself, the elevators, and then the stabilizers that go up on the sides. So we've cut everything out of the sprue, and we've cleaned it up as best we can, and now we're going to go ahead and hope that this goes together a little bit more smoothly than that engine assembly did. It's mostly flat pieces. Actually, it's all flat pieces here. Almost put the wing, the tail on there backwards. Sorry about that. So I'm hoping that it goes together a little bit more smoothly, given the flat construction of the pieces. Yeah, that one went together smooth as butter on the first try. Okay, much better. All right, I'm feeling better already. So here we go with the other one. So as I put this together here, I mean, everyone who listens to the Sitrep podcast probably already knows a lot about the A-10 Warthog. It features prominently in a lot of our favorite games, Team Yankee, among many others. The A-10 was originally a ground attack aircraft developed by Fairchild that came out in the 1970s, or the late 1970s, so supposed to serve into the 1980s. It did serve, obviously, into the 1980s. Actually, the United States Air Force generals in charge of the Air Force were kind of skeptical about the A-10. They didn't like it. It wasn't a fighter. Most of the generals who actually ran the Air Force in those days were primarily ex-fighter pilots. And basically, if it wasn't a big, sexy fighter like the F-16 or the F-15 back in those days, they weren't that interested. So, a big, ugly-looking thing like the A-10 Warthog, oops, got a little bit of extra cleanup there. Which, of course, brings up another point. A-10 is not called the Warthog. A-10 is the Thunderbolt II, named after the P-47 of World War II fame. Tank buster, ground attack aircraft, its primary mission. Obviously, the A-10 has that exact same profile, hence it has the same name. However, it is so damn adorably ugly that it very quickly picked up the nickname Warthog, and of course it stuck. The Warthog was actually kind of being phased out in the 1980s, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy to us today, but between being transferred back to Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve squadrons, they weren't a big fan. Then along came Desert Storm, and the A-10 really got a chance to shine, and now, of course, everybody loves the A-10. So here's the tail assembly. We're going to go ahead and fix it to the aircraft. Alright, let's go ahead and put this tail assembly onto the aircraft. So once I finish dropping it, and once I figure out which way is back to front. Alright, so it's got a very, again, it's made for 8-year-olds, literally. Snap-Tite level 2 for ages 8 and up. So it's not a terribly complicated model. It's got a nice little cradle where the tail assembly sits in there nice and smoothly on the first try. Okay, that went a lot better than that engine assembly disaster. I think I just had bad luck on that engine assembly. But so far, this part is starting to come together a lot better, and hey, it's starting to look a lot like an actual A-10 Warthog. What do you know about that? Good deal. Okay, here now is one of the easier pieces to put on the aircraft. This is the PAVE Penny Laser Pod. PAVE stands for Precision Avionics Vectoring Equipment. As odd as it's going to look, this really is how it goes on the aircraft, just sort of awkwardly stapled onto the side of the fuselage. This is part of the A-10's target acquisition package. This is what it uses to pick up the laser signals from friendly ground units who have painted enemy ground targets with their own laser designators. Alright, now it's time to start blowing some stuff up. So, it's time to start working on the ordnance package. It looks like they gave us 2, I guess those are GBUs, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Mark 82 bombs as well. So I guess we're going to go ahead and put 1 GBU and 3 Mark 82s on each side of the aircraft. I've gone ahead and put the ordnance together, cleaned it up as best I could, and attached them to the hard points. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the hard points to the underside of the wings. Alright, so all the ordnance has now been mounted, and the A-10 is ready for action. We're getting there. Of course, we all know where the A-10's real weapon is. That's the 30mm gun that she has there in the nose. Notice that that gun doesn't really look complete. I don't know if I'm missing a piece or if the model just wasn't really designed right, but I'll get to that when we get to that. Meanwhile, it's time to start working on the cockpit. So I've got the canopy, I've got the pilot that I've already sort of put together, and I've seated him in his cockpit. I'm going to paint him obviously separately because I want to spray the model, and you don't do that with the cockpit in there, or the pilot, and especially the canopy. So for now, we're getting close to, we're about ready to start the spray here. Hold your breath, folks. It's time to start spraying. So yeah, rattle can special, here we come. I'm in my dad's workshop. I'm a couple hundred miles away from home and my airbrush, so I'm doing the best I can with what Walmart has available. Pray for me. But in all seriousness, we're going with the very flat medium gray that we see Warthogs usually deployed in most photographs. So a second coat, just a few more touch-ups here and there where the paint didn't quite get all the way on there. One thing I am already a little bit pleased with is it's covering up a lot of the earlier ugliness, a lot of the flash, a lot of the putty, a lot of the issues that we had in the construction phase of the model. Okay, there's more than one gray on the Warthog, however, so now we're going to try and do the underside. Now the top, or the dorsal side of the aircraft, of course, has that, NATO standard sort of a slate gray that we see in so many photographs. What we're looking for here now is a much lighter, almost like a sky gray. This way, at least in theory, if the enemy tries to look up at the aircraft as it's flying overhead, it might be a little bit tougher to see against the lighter gray sky. This is obviously the kind of thing you would rather be doing with an airbrush, but with a rattle can, I'm going to see if I get away with it. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that two-tone gray pattern, or gray sort of a dynamic, slate gray on the top, sky gray on the bottom. Alright, so here she is so far. It could be better. Again, I really wish I could have done this with an airbrush, but it's not too bad. For a repacked, partially assembled by somebody else, ripped back apart, put back together again, level 2 Snap-Tite model made for ages 8 and up with rattle cans instead of an airbrush. She's not looking too bad. I'm not gonna lie. Time to get started on this Warthog driver. So I've already put together a few pieces of this part of the model kit. I've already painted the cockpit, I guess, base plate or floor, whatever you want to call it, sort of a medium gray. And I have, now I'm starting on a olive drab flight suit and a helmet for the pilot. So we're going to get a little detail here and then put it into the fuselage. Alright, so here is our pilot and his cockpit, painted up as best I can. You can see where the kid who had this before me already put the instrument panel, the decal in there on the front of the cockpit. Again, guys, this is a model rescue. Okay, the pilot is in the cockpit is in the fuselage, and the canopy glass is in place over the cockpit. Not gonna lie, this part was really hard because I am doing this part of the model way out of order. For a level 2 Snap-Tite model, ages 8 and up, they're not expecting you to paint the model. So you're supposed to put all that assembly together into the fuselage before you glue the two sides of the fuselage together. No real modeler would ever do that. You can't paint all that stuff after you've glued the two sides of the fuselage together. So again, I'm doing the best I can with what I have. Alright, so the whole aircraft is finally put together. Again, The last bits of cockpit and canopy assembly had to wait till after the spraying phase, obviously, because clear canopy glass. It's time to do some of the detail work. So I'm starting on the tires of the landing gear. Note they do not retract entirely into the aircraft undercarriage. This is the A-10 Warthog. These aircraft are obviously meant to be low altitude, low speed ground pounders, not the most elegant of aircraft. Time to get back to work on the weapons loadout, and there's a lot of work to do here because the A-10 has a really big weapons loadout, as I'm sure we all know. So I've got a total of 9 hardpoints on this model. I believe the A-10 actually has 11 hardpoints, an extremely well-equipped aircraft for the ground attack role. You see 6 hardpoints here with the smaller, I think those are Mark 82 bombs. We have 2 hardpoints with the GBUs, the larger GBU bombs. And technically the Pave Penny laser pod counts as a hardpoint. So that's 9. I believe the real Warthog has 2 hardpoints under the fuselage. But this kit did not include that, or didn't give me any weapons to put on that, so I think I have 9 here on this aircraft. So I'm going to go ahead and paint the bombs green, and I'll put some details on that later as we go forward with this process. Time for a progress checkpoint. So I have finished up the ordnance. I do have a little bit of overstep on the yellow tips I put on the bombs there. I will clean that up when I put the wash on there. I also have a little bit of a black outline on the engine cowlings and also on the afterburner cones, just to add a little bit more detail to this model and to make it pop just a little bit more. Most of the base colors are now down on the aircraft, so I'm going to start to put washes down where needed, very judiciously. So putting washes, I've learned, on aircraft is very, very different than putting washes on tanks or other ground vehicles. So, oh man, sorry about my gigantic hand that's taking up the entire frame there. That's terrible photography. But suffice it to say, where I'm trying to put some wash here is in the engine fans, inside those cowlings. Get those friggin' knuckles out of the way, man. What are you doing? So, okay, there we go. I'm trying to put a wash there to make those details pop a little more. So one part of the model that definitely needs a lot of love is the main gun. I don't even think I have all the parts. Again, this was a repack model. For all I know, I'm missing parts. Okay, yeah, so there is the wash on the compression fans inside the engine cowlings. But what I'm really looking at here is the main gun. It doesn't even have the cap to the rotary cylinder. Yeah, so this thing's going to need a lot of love. Alright, so here we are after we apply the stickers. Not the transfers, not the decals. I'm quoting the instructions exactly. The, quote, bonus action stickers that come with your model kit. Again, Snap-Tite level 2, ages 8 and up. These didn't require any kind of water. You literally peel them off of plastic and slap them on the model. I'm definitely going to be dropping about a gallon of matte varnish on this thing to try and take some of that hideous shine off those decals, or excuse me, stickers, as best I can. I swear I feel like I just rescued this poor puppy from a pound or something. But we've added some more detail to the ordnance package up underneath, and yeah, we're doing the best we can with this model kit. Okay, to enhance the look of the model as best I can, I've gone ahead and applied some pinwashing where it was easy and obvious. Again, when you're doing an aircraft, it is so easy to overwash the aircraft. They're not supposed to look like tanks or ground vehicles. I've also gone ahead and corrected the main gun with some homemade pieces because, again, I was either missing pieces or they didn't include them in the kit. So, yeah. I've also applied a pin wash to some more of the ordnance package, especially if I can get it in focus. There we go. So hopefully that looks a little bit better. And, oh, some navigation lights. There we go. So we looked it up. We put red on the port side, green on the starboard side, and some other lights and markings that we see in some, references and, photographs of A-10s. So, yeah, slowly but surely we are getting there. So here is the model, or at least as far as I'm going to take it today. I started off with a very heavy application of matte varnish on some of these hideous, absolutely hideous stickers. I also went back to the ordnance package, and I, again, did a lot of cleanup, some additional details, and some pin washing. I'd say I'm about 50% happy with the way the matte varnish has applied to those god-awful stickers. Some of them didn't turn out too bad. This tail assembly doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look too great either, to be honest. But the national markings on the wings, on the fuselage, don't look too god-awful. That shark mouth on the nose doesn't, that could definitely be nicer. I'm not going to lie. But I'm not going to enter her in any competitions for like a $6 or $7 model that some poor kid tried to put together, threw it back in the box, and they resold it. But I tell you what, as a gaming piece, she will scare the hell out of some 20mm insertions on the gaming table. I can tell you that for sure. So that's going to wrap us up for this episode of the Sitrep podcast. This is Oriskany Jim. Thanks very much, as always, for joining us and for all your support. And we'll be in touch with everybody very soon. Take care, everyone.